All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Welcome to the fireside where we get to gather around this virtual fireside. And through these traditional ways of storytelling and dialogue, beauty making, we bring our spirits together and we stir the remembrances of what it is to be indigenous of Earth. Right. Here we get to engage in these traditional ways of passing on learnings and skills through these oral traditions. And in this fire gathering specifically, we're going to explore what does it mean to become nature-wise and adopt these indigenous ways of learning from nature instead of about nature, learning in these ways that weaves us back into relationship with place. And in this, we'll explore what are these three core languages of nature and how by knowing them, they really clues you into these conversations that are occurring all around you every moment of the day and why this is important, especially in this time. We'll also explore these traditional ways of learning. What are these ancestral ways of learning, not just from nature, but coming back into this indigenous way of being a part of the earth? And we find that by learning these, we discover what does it really mean to belong to place, to be in togetherness, to not just steward the land, but actually allow the land to steward us. And in this is an introduction to our upcoming learning trail called Becoming NatureWise. And so for anyone who's interested in that, I'll share some details with that later. Now, if you're new to me, my name is Chi, which is short for Chivito Koa, translates as little goat crow, a name that was given to me in a very beautiful ceremony. And for nearly 20 years now, I've been facilitating retreats. I've been providing nature-based mentoring and really learning and apprenticing, directly to nature. And I've been apprenticing to these, what we call these ancestral and indigenous ways, with elders of various traditions they've not only just given me their blessings to share, but they were very emphatic that it's my duty to pass on what they've passed on to me so that others may also remember themselves home. Something that was very impactful was that, they shared how we are all part of nature. We're all in an extension of the earth's dreamings. And so we all have access to these sacred ways of belonging. Now in this, I've been a wilderness guide for at-risk youth where they spend over 100 days in the wilderness just using primitive methods. I've been leading wilderness rites of passage for both youth and adults, facilitating vision quest, teaching nature skills. And I facilitate what we call Tree of Totems, which is a nature-based community focused on restoring these traditional ways of learning through games, storytelling, having the direct experience of being out there in nature and in togetherness, bringing the elders around the fire and bringing back in these like rites of passage as we move through very key stages in our life. Now in this fire gathering, you're going to experience some of these traditional ways in which we share on the learning trail of becoming nature-wise. And the way we begin these fire gatherings is by giving offerings into the fire, speaking our prayers and our songs so we may call in the spirit of the knowledge that we seek. And the reason we do this is because each of the elders of these many traditions that I've been so blessed to learn with, each one in their own way has instructed me how what we seek is also seeking us. And when we approach it with reverence, with beauty making, then what we seek will fill our reverence and then greet us in a sacred way. So instead of merely learning information, instead you have an experience of remembering these ancestral ways which are woven within our bones. Just like the salmon who've been cut off from their ancestral birthing grounds due to the dams that have been erected in the rivers, right? They've been cut off for generations, but when those dams come down, that new generation, even though they haven't been there, they're able to remember themselves home because it is part of that bone memory. There's an old saying that says, we are all part of the old stories. We are all part of the old stories, whether you know the stories or not. Those old stories know about us. And so when we gather around in these sacred ways and apprentice ourselves to the land, we have this experience of remembering. So to give offerings into our fire, I'm going to share a poem with you. And in this poem really encapsulates what this journey of learning, of becoming NatureWise is really entails. And what does it mean to be in relationship to our environment? So take a moment and just really invite yourself to arrive into a space of presence and ask, how present are you willing to be with your life right now, with this knowledge and these skills that you seek, that and these rememberings that are also seeking you, helping you to trail your way home. And just kind of feel into your body for a moment and take in a slow, deep inhalation. And as you exhale, relax your whole body. Inhale and just become aware of that presence of the breath that you're breathing in. As you exhale again, relax your whole body. And with this, feel into these words and see, where do you find yourselves in this poem, in the imagery called Attuned to the Forest. As I walk amongst the forest, the robins, they tell me where owl is hiding. As I follow the fresh tracks and the soft duff of the forest floor, I snack on the roots of licorice ferns, savoring their sweet taste. They're adorning the moss, clinging to the maple trees I walk past. Suddenly, my senses, they alert me of the bittersweet smells of plants freshly broken. I look down and I see the fiddlehead tops of ferns have been bitten off. Tracks and scat leave clues. Deer is nearby, hidden from view, watching me. But the chickadee speaks and tells me her location. It's been a long day and my throat asks for water. I see down the hill where the village of the cottonwood trees dwell. Their village is always close to water. I go there and find a stream flowing at their rooted feet. I give my offerings to water. I speak my prayers. I offer my gratitude and invite the mountain's waters to enter me, to become the waters of my body. The day is now late, and as the sun sets, I am reminded how I am the younger relative of the sun, the younger relative of the trees and plants, of mountain and deer. I give a deep bow. I give thanks for all this day has offered me to remember myself home. I give thanks. Feel into those words. What does that stir within you? What imagery or soul language captured you? So becoming NatureWise is what we call a learning trail. It is a path that you walk. And as you walk, you gain experience. You gain the hidden knowledge and gain what we call these unteachable learnings. These unteachable learnings that will only ever be known to you on the mountain, to you and Chickadee or your backyard. That will only ever be available to you by walking the traditional path, spending time on the land. In other words, it's a path of cultivating relationship and being in conversation with what you seek. And it's allowing these conversations with nature to change you. So we find that many of our field guides and our modern approaches of learning nature is more focused on learning about nature instead of learning from nature. Right? They break down plants into scientific classifications and birds and animals into categories with lists of information. And when we separate ourselves from them by learning about them from a distance, we deprive ourselves of the holy relationships that we have access to. And we also deny the nobility and the sovereignty of the plants and the birds and the animals, the nobility of their families and their communities that they are a part of. An indigenous mind, however, we have a more humble approach. We look for relationships and how everything fits together. We adopt a sense that we are the younger relatives of the plants and the birds and the animals, and we position ourselves to learn from them. I had this amazing mentor. His name was Ben, a Hopi elder, who I met down in Page, Arizona, along Lake Powell. And he modeled this very humble way of being a student of the land. And he called these learnings, these teachings, he called these the original instructions given to us by Creator. And my teachers in India, they call these the original understandings. And I've heard the Aborigine call these the original songlines. And so you can see how these are universal. And each of these teachers have shared that our task is to return to nature where we have this experience of remembering these original instructions, remembering that which is part of our bone memory, just like the salmon. When we do, we come back in togetherness. And when we do venture out into nature in this indigenous approach, we discover how we are woven back within its tapestry of togetherness. Each time we go out, whether that's your backyard and you speak into that great vast sky, or you bend down low and touch the earth, each time we go out, we have a sense of remembering ourselves home. And it is said for you to truly learn something, you want to know the language it speaks. If you go to Spain without knowing the language, you'll be able to see the sights, but so much will be missed, so much will be lost. You won't really be able to get into that authentic depths and these expressions of the Spanish culture, right? You'll remain a tourist, engage on a very superficial layer. And that's all good if you're on vacation, right? But how many of us are a tourist in our own environment? How many of us are not really listening in and tapping into the languages of nature, the birds, the plants, everything that we are a part of? So to learn from nature in a way that weaves you back into sacred belonging and its hidden rememberings, you want to learn the languages. You want to learn that sacred etiquette and these cultural ways of relating. And that's what you'll learn on this upcoming learning trail, Becoming NatureWise. You will learn the core nature skills and awarenesses. You'll heighten your senses and know what to listen for, what to look for, how to see through the eyes of connection and relationship, to know the traditional stories of the land that weaves you back into relationship with the land. So here you learn the basic arts of what's called the scout. Now, scout is actually a word that comes from the French language, which means knowing how to listen. Knowing how to listen. And to know how to listen is to first know the languages of nature. And I'll share what these are and what these entail in just a moment. Now, by knowing them, suddenly a veil is lifted from your eyes. And you'll become aware how you're never not in nature. You are never not in nature. There's these complex social structures, family dynamics, courting, and grieving rituals that are happening around you all day long, every day. When you tap into them, you become included in the conversations. You become included with this greater, thriving community that most humans are completely oblivious to. Now, we stampede through life like blind elephants. We stay on these grid pathways of concrete. How many people really ever touch the living naked earth with our own naked skin? How much time does our naked skin connect with the naked skin of the earth, the soil? And we always have a barrier between us. And so within this, we can see how one of the core premises we're exploring as you learn these core nature skills and awarenesses is, what does it mean to belong to place? What does it mean to be indigenous of earth? The waters I drink in becomes the waters of my body. The food, the plants, the animals that I may eat are of this earth, and so my body is of this earth. So the mind of deer or the mind of the sagebrush or the zucchini I eat, they become part of my mind and weaves me back into the dreamings of the earth. So we have that sacred belonging. Consider a time where you had a felt sense of belonging somewhere, such like a hometown, right? It's likely you knew the ins and outs of the streets, the different cafes. Perhaps you had a favorite farmer's market. And within these, it's likely you knew the people you encountered on a regular basis, just as they knew you, right? You had a sense of familiarity with each other. Now imagine having that same sense of familiarity, that sense of welcoming and knowing of the land that you live within and the inhabitants of place. Imagine knowing the birds, the plants, the animals. You were familiar with their routines and relationships with each other. And imagine that you could sense they were familiar with you, that they included you in their village. It is such a magical experience. See, what we're about to do is enter a way of apprenticing to nature that the Aborigine call wild land dreaming, where you go out on the land or your backyard or your neighborhood and you connect in so that the animals, the birds, the plants, even the weather can speak directly with you, can dream through you the remembrances of our belonging. It's a way of learning these traditional stories of the land and the plants and animals, and hence being tuned into the stories that connect you to place. I mean, think about the people you know very well in your life, who you have great sense of familiarity with, is because you know about their stories. And so here you will learn bird language and how the birds are narrating what's happening in your environment through their behavior, their types of songs or the sounds they make, their body language. When you can tap into bird language, you're going to know all the gossip that's going on around you, whether a predator is coming in, whether that be a hawk or a cat, or maybe it's you. I mean, it's amazing what you will discover by tapping into bird language. You'll learn about the plants and gain knowledge of the plants of your area, right? And with their medicinal uses, you may gain some foraging skills, some of the traditional uses, the traditional stories of these plants that reveal their relationship with the people, the plants in place, right? Why is a plant growing here? And if a plant is growing in a place, what that might that be indicative of? Like what birds may be around, what other animals, right? You'll learn the basics of tracking, and reading animal signs, learning to read the stories that the tracks and the signs are telling, how they clue you into the greater stories and the relationships at play. Right? The tracks and animal sign, they often reveal the routines, the rituals and lifestyles of our animal relatives. And when you can tune your eye into all the signs, if it's just your backyard, where a squirrel has moved through, or where a robin has hopped in, or where a neighbor's cat came through, suddenly you're starting to see these relationships and routines that just flesh out your environment. It helps you to see like the individual plants and animals from the wall of green or just the noise around you, and suddenly you're just part of the conversation. Now, by learning these languages, you can see how you are attuning yourself to these greater relationships and all the things that are happening around you every moment of the day that most humans are oblivious to. Now, what this learning trail is not, it is not a technical study about plants, birds, and animals, right? You will learn like the modern colonized forms of plant classification, so you can effectively and very easily use the field guides that are out there. But we're not here to learn about nature from a distance, right? There's no beauty making in that. There's no real relationship. You're not going to be presented a list of plants and birds and animals to memorize information, because you don't learn and build relationship by memorizing information. But what we will do is share how to identify the plants of your area. We'll open up the treasure chest of the traditional stories of these plants, and through storytelling, reveal the indigenous wisdom, right? The medicines, the rituals, the uses of them. And we're going to invite you to go out on the land, whether that's your backyard, your neighborhood, a park, the forest, and greet the plants and trees of your area, to spend time with them, build relationship and familiarity with them, and allow them to gain a familiarity with you. And while you're out there on the land learning from the plants, you'll hone in your bird and squirrel language skills. What are they saying is happening around you? It's likely you'll come across tracks and scat, animal sign while foraging for plants. And here you'll learn how to pull the threads of their mystery, how to ask the right questions, discover what story they tell. Then we return to the virtual fireside, where we get to pool our findings and share our stories of new relationships and what we experience by applying the languages of nature and your new sensory skills. And this is what we call that traditional collaborative way of learning, where we learn from each other. And through these different lenses, right, both modern and ancestral, you gain a language and heightened awareness of being part of nature rather than like an oblivious tourist just passing through. And so it's likely you can sense how this learning trail of becoming NatureWise, it's inviting you into an old way of learning and experiencing nature. So when you're out in nature, you discover you are surrounded by story. The earth is breathing story. And through myth and stories, you learn to pay attention to the little things, to the almost invisible details. Right? You learn to turn your head, to smell the air, to listen with heightened alertness. And when you learn to listen in this way, you are now listening through your heart. And when you listen through your heart, you avail yourself to the 10,000 trembling secrets that are hidden in plain view all around us, that guides us back to remembering ourselves home as part of this thriving village of earth. It is a magical, magical experience. So I'm going to share the details for those who are curious about what does it mean to join this learning trail, then I'm going to open up for dialogue so we can be in conversation. We can contribute our voice and our spirits into the circle and answer questions and share in our stories. So Becoming NatureWise is a learning trail. We begin next week, May 27th. And it's a 4-month journey. It's a way of apprenticing to nature. And so twice a month, we'll have a virtual council fire, just like we're having tonight, Thursdays at 6 p.m., where we pool our experiences of being out on the land, what we've learned. You get to have mentoring there, experience traditional elders that'll be coming in and sharing their knowledge. Right? You'll have access to our online platform where I'll have videos, charts, articles, so you can access, again and again, this knowledge base and go as deep as you want to go. And between these council fires, we're going to invite you to go out and spend time on the land, your backyard or neighborhood. And we call this having earth time. And we'll offer you treasure hunts and games to get you out into nature and fun ways of honing in your new nature awareness, right? Of really honing in your language of nature speak. And during this entire 4-month journey, you get a tremendous amount of mentoring. We have skilled mentors who've been going through our shadow guide training over this year, who's been a part of this program. They're going to be available. There'll be a couple elders who will be a part of our circles coming in. And you also have access to me, and you can schedule a phone session at any time. And you can experience this traditional way of mentoring called coyote mentoring, which helps to pull out the learnings, helps you dial in these into your land and what you're experiencing. So it really becomes a special apprenticeship where you are fully supported in this. So this is a very fun, interactive, experiential learning while you're part of a very like-spirited tribe of learning together. And all this is done to the traditional ways of storytelling and weaving in this mythic lens of our indigenous relatives. So again, we start next week, May 27th. Want to enroll by the 23rd or 25th at the very latest. And this is a very opportune time to join because right now we have this as 50% off during these COVID times. So instead of $1,600, it's only $800. And we're going to make this available to as many people as we can so everyone has that sense of community with that like-spirited tribe and has this way of connecting with nature. The bonds we form here are amazing. And we also have payment plans. We have scholarships available for those who may need that or want that. So just reach out and connect with us. Right? And to join, all you have to do is just email me at learning@treeoftotems.com and just share why this resonates with you. And then we'll get on the phone and connect a little further. I like to listen into your dreamings, what resonates, and I'll answer any questions you have and just make sure it is a good feel. This is an invite-only journey. We are very, very specific with who we invite in to make sure we have a very special group and container as we do this journey. So if this resonates, let's chat. Imagine spending the summer, right? Your summer apprenticing to nature and being immersed in these traditional indigenous stories of the plants and animals, of learning these ancestral languages and mindsets of being in relationship with the earth and each other, right? To be part of a like-spirited group of people learning in togetherness. It's a very playful and very powerful journey, so I hope you join us. Now, before we come into our dialogue, I'd like to close this with a very special poem by Mary Oliver called Summer's Day. And she asks a very potent question. And this is this poem, one of my favorites. Who made the world? Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down low, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day long. Tell me, what should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? What is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Mary Oliver. Home.